Episode 3: How you can minimize your digital footprint. This is the third and final episode in our series on your digital footprint and how to minimize it. It is designed to be a hands-on educational tool to instruct people of all levels of computer literacy on steps that you can take to reduce your digital footprint. We will discuss some everyday tips that can be followed to start reducing your digital footprint immediately. We will also look at various options of anonymizing the online experience, such as through VPNs, proxies, and software programs like Tor. Lastly, we will learn about the effectiveness of these different methods, finishing up with a discussion on whether it is possible to be truly anonymous online. Throughout this episode, as we go along, you will see some footage to demonstrate the concepts and methods that we discuss. Part 1: What you can start doing today to reduce your digital footprint. Before we look at some specific methods and tools in detail, there are a few attitudes and behaviors that you should embrace. To begin to reduce your digital footprint, you are going to need to be vigilant. Interested parties will be constantly adapting their methods to track your behavior, and as we have seen, there is still uncertainty surrounding exactly what various government agencies can and will monitor. For this reason, I would encourage you to begin the process by starting to educate yourself about areas you may have taken for granted in the past. This means reading the privacy policies of the software and digital services that you use. It is important to look at elements such as what data is being held onto, who this data is shared with, and how it is stored. Once you begin to think along these lines, the rest will come naturally. I also encourage you to consider the main culprits that are adding to your digital footprint. Write down a list of your online accounts, emails, social media platforms, and subscription services, essentially anything you have signed up to. I'm not suggesting at this point that you attempt to delete everything in some sort of paranoid panic. Just begin to become mindful of what information you're volunteering, how this can be linked back to you, and how and by whom this is accessible. A good technique to give you an idea of how viewable your digital footprint is to the greater public is to Google your name in quotation marks and display the results from the past 12 months. You should also educate yourself on the privacy settings of the various services you use. For instance, Facebook can be set up to be almost invisible to other users, provided that the right privacy settings are activated. Whilst a good technique to anonymize yourself from other Facebook users, this will not do much to prevent the data brokers and certain other parties observing your activity online. For this reason, it is a good idea to become aware of the many privacy-enhancing tools available online and begin to employ these. These tools are not only useful to protect specific areas of your digital footprint, but they are also handy to become aware of what elements of your online behavior different observers are looking at. We will now discuss some specific methods and tools in more detail. Beginning with the basic experience of browsing the internet, you should start to take steps to manage your cookies. Open your browser settings or preferences and navigate to the security and privacy sections. Most browsers nowadays will give you the option of disabling cookies and telling sites that you do not wish to be tracked. You can do this if you wish to, now that you understand how the advertising messages delivered to you will be affected as a result. You can also navigate to your browser's cookie cache to examine exactly what a cookie looks like and what kind of information different cookies contain. If you do not know how to do this, a quick Google search on how to view cookies in your particular browser will guide you. If your browser does not allow you to block third-party cookies, there are many additional plugins available that will assist in controlling these cookies. As discussed in episode 1, Ghostery is an excellent tool that is available for most modern browsers free of charge. This add-on will enable you to monitor all of the different web servers that are being called from a particular web page and match those with a library of known offenders. You can configure Ghostery to block communications with one or more of these companies so that it will interrupt the call from leaving your browser. This method is actually more effective than opting out or blocking cookies because those strategies still allow the browser to communicate with the web server, They merely try to alter the communication or the response. When blocking is enabled, Ghostery never allows the communication in the first place. Ghostery also works as a standalone app for iPhones, iPads, and iPods, as well as for Firefox on Android phones. This is important, obviously, because in a modern world, as we know, all of these devices are contributing more and more to your digital footprint. On this note, some of you may also wish to reconsider just how many devices with access to the internet you are using on a daily basis. The next method you can employ immediately to reduce your digital footprint is to alter the privacy settings within the platforms that you regularly use. Remember, preventing exposure of your photographs or other information is far easier than trying to round up and eliminate this information once it is in the public sphere, a feat that in some cases is simply impossible. If you use Twitter or Facebook or any other social networking site, I encourage you to navigate to the privacy settings under the Settings or Preferences section. Once there, familiarize yourself with the different levels of privacy and adjust accordingly. For instance, it may be worth adjusting who can see your photos. It is not recommended that any of these settings be set to public for anybody who is concerned about the proliferation of their digital footprint. This same technique can also be employed for any blog or weblog pages such as YouTube. Again, for anybody concerned about their digital footprint, this step is essential. Even with the highest privacy settings engaged, it is a good idea to always think twice before uploading anything personal to the internet. We will now investigate some more intricate measures that can be employed to theoretically anonymize your online browsing experience and prevent your digital footprint from expanding. Part 2. Proxy servers, virtual private networks, and Tor. As already discussed, everything you do online can in theory be traced back to your computer. It is possible through a proxy server or a virtual private network to encrypt the signals coming and going from your computer and thus your unique IP address. Starting with a proxy server, remember we said earlier that each router or modem in your house has a unique IP address? Any interested party can easily find out where you are with this IP address. Whenever you go onto a website, you send a passive request to them containing packets of data. Each packet of data has your IP address in it. What a proxy server does is it acts as an intermediary between your computer as the client and any server you connect to. In other words, it acts as a middleman between your computer and the information you are seeking to access. Without going into specifics about the technology, all you need to do is type into Google a search term along the lines of free proxy servers and navigate to one that seems appropriate. When you visit that page, you will see a box you can type a web address or search term into, and once you press enter, you will visit that page via the proxy. Now, the IP address that the web page you visit can see will not be your own, but rather another IP address, most likely located in another continent. You may notice that the browsing experience slows down using this method, and this is normal. Remember, your signal is traveling a greater distance and through an intermediary. To test this in action, I urge you to first find out your IP address if you don't know it already by visiting whatismyipaddress.com. Write this number down. Next, access any proxy server using the method just described, and through the proxy, visit whatismyipaddress.com again to see how it changes. This website will display your fake IP address, if you like, and will give you an idea of where in the world you appear to be located. Using a proxy server, while effective at hiding your IP address from a number of interested parties, can only really be employed when using the internet at its most basic level, browsing. Furthermore, a lot of websites can detect the use of a proxy server and will block them. If you want to use other applications or programs that also connect to the web whilst masking your IP and geolocation, you are going to need to use a virtual private network, or VPN. This technology is very similar to what we have discussed in proxy servers, only a VPN will encrypt all of your online traffic, essentially replacing your ISP and routing all traffic through the VPN server that you choose. This means that all programs and applications you use that require internet access will travel through this server, which will have an IP address and location that is different from your own. There are other benefits to using a VPN over a proxy server as well. For instance, the experience is often faster and is said by many to be more secure. Keep this in mind, as we will be looking at just how effective and secure these methods really are in the following section of this video. A VPN can easily be connected or disconnected via the click of a button and should work with all internet-based services. This differs to a proxy, which, as we have discussed, will not be compatible with certain services that use non-browser technology and can also be blocked by Cluey websites. There are several VPNs that you can begin to use today if you wish to. One of these worth mentioning is Buffered, a VPN that boasts recently having been voted Australia's #1 VPN by bestvpn.com. You can visit their website at buffered.com. You will notice that this is a paid subscription service, as most good VPNs are. Most are between $8 and $10 a month and are available to download on Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS and Android devices. Buffered also allows you to select from a list of countries around the world that have servers you can connect to mask your own IP and geolocation. I encourage you to check this out and shop around. Product differentiation points to keep in mind are speed, ease of use, and price. If privacy and preventing your digital footprint from expanding are important to you, this will be money well spent. If you use a VPN and combine this with the tips and approaches to using the web we have already covered, you can rest assured that your digital footprint will be in a far better position than the majority of internet users today. The final option for anonymizing your online experience that we will discuss is Tor. This software is getting a lot of attention lately for some interesting reasons, and because of this, it is important that you have at least a basic understanding of what it is and how it works. Tor is said to be more anonymous than a VPN, and therefore the most anonymous option for internet activity. Tor, short for the Onion Router, was initially developed by the US Navy as a worldwide network of servers that allow people to browse the internet anonymously. It is now run as a not-for-profit organization which aims to foster research and development of online privacy tools. Put simply, Tor disguises your identity by moving your traffic across different Tor servers and encrypting that traffic so it isn't traceable back to you. Anyone who tries to trace the traffic would theoretically see signals coming from random nodes on the Tor network rather than your computer or unique IP address. Unlike a VPN, where the VPN provider knows your real IP address and can see your internet traffic at the exit point or the VPN server, with Tor, your signal is routed through a number of nodes, each of which is only aware of the IP addresses in front of the node and behind it, so that at no point can anyone know the whole path between your computer and the website you are trying to connect with. If all of this is confusing you, don't worry. There are several explanations of how it all works that are easily accessible with a simple internet search. With all the techno talk aside, Tor is used for several reasons. It is championed by civil libertarians and people with an interest in increasing their privacy online and reducing their digital footprint. Tor is useful for anyone who wants to keep their internet activities out of the hands of advertisers, ISPs, and other websites who may have an interest in tracking you. As we have already discussed, there are certainly plenty out there who are trying to do just that. Unfortunately, due to the anonymity offered by Tor, there are a number of people using it for illegitimate or illegal purposes. Because of the way the Tor network works, it can also host websites through its hidden services that are only accessible by other Tor users. Some of these hidden sites that you may have heard of include online marketplaces for controlled substances and firearms. For obvious reasons, we will not be going into detail about how to reach these places. But you may take comfort in that if people are prepared to take such risks, they must be pretty confident in Tor's level of anonymity. We will discuss just how effective and truly anonymous this service is in the following and final part of this series. Before doing so, I will briefly explain how you can download and use Tor. To access this network, you simply need to download the Tor browser available at torproject.org. The installation process is very simple. Once installed, everything you do in the browser will go through the Tor network and will not require any setup or configuration from you. The instructions for installation are all available at torproject.org. We've now reached the last part of this third and final episode in this series. We will now examine whether it is possible to be truly anonymous online. Part 3. Is it possible to be truly anonymous online? The short answer to this question is no. It is quite simply impossible to become 100% anonymous and untraceable online. This comes down to the way the World Wide Web was initially developed and the purpose for which it was developed. Basically, when the whole system was built, Internet users being anonymous was never a concern of the developers. It is simply not designed for anonymity, as the whole framework of the World Wide Web was developed to allow trusted computers on trusted networks to communicate with other trusted computers. In addition, there are so many large commercial and government interests out there with so much money and power who don't want you to be anonymous that if they want to observe you and your activity online, they will. The FBI has recently revealed that with enough resources and funds at its fingertips, it can and has cracked into the Tor network to uncover users on the network for illegal purposes. Further, the NSA in America, and most likely the DSD and other security agencies here in Australia, do have the technology to establish if you're a Tor user, making them more likely to target you for further investigation. In saying all this, however, you should not be too concerned. Whilst we cannot be completely anonymous online, we can certainly become a lot more anonymous. I'm assuming that the bulk of my audience here is not interested in trafficking arms and narcotics, but rather in increasing their privacy and reducing the online footprint we've been talking about all along. For the majority of us, therefore, following the advice provided in this episode and the use of a VPN or Tor will be perfectly sufficient. In fact, a VPN is probably all you will need and will avoid issues such as a dramatic decrease in internet speed you would notice with Tor. To summarize, if you want to become 100% anonymous online, you are probably wasting your time. The way the system has been designed and the huge amounts of resources held by those who have an interest in tracking certain users makes it pretty much pointless. If, however, you are an average user of the internet, you don't have to worry about the government spying on your activity. A VPN will be perfectly sufficient to hide your metadata as well as prevent intrusive advertising messages and cookies. Furthermore, an awareness of cookies, cookie control tools, privacy settings and policies, as well as a basic understanding of how a digital footprint grows, should be all you need. With all of these techniques and tools employed, your digital footprint will be significantly smaller, putting you in a far better position than most active users of the World Wide Web today. That brings us to the end of this series of your digital footprint and how to minimize it. Thank you for listening, and remember, educate yourself and stay vigilant.